What if I told you there is a question that has no answer? Not because the answer is hidden, not because it hasn't been discovered yet, but because the very act of searching for the answer is what keeps you from finding it. For over 1,000 years, Buddhist monks have sat in silence, sometimes for days, sometimes for weeks, wrestling with questions that would make a philosopher's head spin. These questions were never meant to be solved with logic. They were designed to break logic entirely. They are called koans. And today, we're going inside them. Section 1. What is a koan? The word koan comes from the Chinese gongen, which loosely translates to public case, like a legal precedent. But unlike a court ruling, a koan doesn't deliver a verdict. It delivers a crisis, a beautiful, deliberate, carefully constructed crisis in your mind. In Zen Buddhism, a master would give a student a koan not to be discussed, debated, or analyzed, but to be lived with, to sit inside, to carry like a stone in your chest that you couldn't put down and couldn't swallow. The student's job wasn't to find the right answer. The student's job was to be changed by the question. There are over 1,700 recorded koans in the Zen tradition. Some come from the Blue Cliff Record, compiled in China around the year 1125. Others come from the Gateless Gate, a collection of 48 koans assembled by the monk Wumen Huikai in the 13th century. These aren't riddles. A riddle has a trick answer waiting at the end. A koan has no end. It is more like a door, and the only way through is to stop trying to open it. Let's step inside a few. Section 2. The sound of one hand. You've probably heard some version of this one before, even if you didn't know its origin. What is the sound of one hand clapping? Master Hakuin Ekaku, one of the most revered figures in Japanese Zen, introduced this koan in the 18th century. He gave it to his students as a starting point, a way to shatter the ordinary cause and effect thinking that keeps most human minds trapped in the predictable. Your brain immediately wants to solve it. Two hands clapping make a sound. One hand moves through air, makes a whoosh, creates silence. But here's what's interesting. None of those answers are wrong in the way you'd expect, and none of them are right in the way you'd hope. Students who approached Hakuin with logical answers were turned away. One student came back and simply held up one hand in silence. Another slapped the floor. Another pressed their palm to Hakuin's cheek. What Hakuin was really asking wasn't about acoustics. He was asking, can you experience something before your mind labels it? Can you perceive before you categorize? The sound of one hand is the experience of reality before thought divides it into this and that. Sound and silence, real and unreal. Your brain can't solve this because your brain is part of the problem. Section 3. What was your face before your parents were born? Now we go deeper. What did your face look like before your parents were born? Take a moment, actually sit with that. Your face, as you know it, is a product of genetics, of time, of the accumulation of experiences that shape the muscles around your eyes and mouth. But before all of that, before your parents even existed, what were you? This koan is pointing directly at the concept of original nature, what Zen calls Buddha nature, the idea that beneath all the layers of identity, personality, memory, and ego, there is something that was never born and therefore can never die. Your name was given to you, your face was inherited, your beliefs were taught, your language was learned. Strip all of that away, strip away everything that was added to you, and what remains? Zen says something does remain. It's just that we spend our entire lives so identified with the added parts, the name, the story, the face, that we've completely forgotten what was there before any of it arrived. The student who answers this koan with a description of a face has missed it entirely. The student who sits and points at the questioner, who turns the question back on the asker, who laughs and says nothing, is getting closer to something real. This isn't mysticism for its own sake. This is pointing at a genuine psychological truth. Most of what we call self is constructed, and if it's constructed, it can be deconstructed. And in that deconstruction is a kind of freedom that most people never experience. Section 4. Does a dog have Buddha nature? This is perhaps the most famous koan in the entire Zen tradition. A monk once asked Master Zheizhu, "Does a dog have Buddha nature?" Zheizhu answered, "Mu." In Chinese, mu means no or nothing or without, but calling it a simple no would be far too small. The monk's question comes from Buddhist doctrine, which teaches that all sentient beings possess Buddha nature, the potential for enlightenment. So the question seems to have an obvious answer. Yes, of course the dog has Buddha nature. But Zheizhu says mu. Why? Because the question itself is the trap. The moment you ask, does the dog have Buddha nature, you've already assumed that Buddha nature is something that can be possessed or not possessed, like a coin you either have in your pocket or you don't. Zheizhu's mu isn't a no. It's an erasure of the entire framework of the question. Students in Zen monasteries have spent years with just this one syllable, mu, meditating on it, sleeping with it, working with it, not trying to understand mu but trying to become mu. The Master Wumen wrote that to pass through this gate, you must make your entire body into a mass of doubt and wrestle with mu day and night. He said it's like swallowing a red-hot iron ball. You can't spit it out and you can't swallow it down. You can only sit with it, burning. And somewhere in that burning, something opens. Section 5. Why koans work. The neuroscience angle. Here's where it gets fascinating. Modern neuroscience is beginning to catch up with what Zen masters figured out 1,000 years ago through direct experience. The human brain is a prediction machine. At every moment, your brain is taking incoming sensory data and running it through a massive library of past experiences, patterns, and categories to generate a model of reality. You don't see the world as it is. You see the world as your brain predicts it to be, based on what has come before. This is efficient. It's why you can drive a car, have a conversation, and drink coffee at the same time. But it also means you are living, to a large degree, in a simulation, a very convincing, personalized, automatic simulation generated by your past. Koans are like throwing a wrench into that machine. When the brain encounters a koan, it reaches into its library and finds nothing. The pattern matching system fails, the prediction engine stalls, and in that stalling, in that brief, vertiginous moment where the brain doesn't know what to do next, something else can happen. Researchers studying long-term meditators have found that insight experiences, the kind of sudden aha moments associated with koan practice, correlate with increased gamma wave activity in the brain, particularly in regions associated with integration of information across different networks. In other words, the moment of Zen breakthrough isn't a shutdown of the brain. It's a fusion, a sudden integration of normally separate processes into a unified whole. The rational mind gets stuck, and in getting stuck, it gets out of the way. Section 6. 3 pounds of flax. What is Buddha? A monk asked Master Dongshan this question with total sincerity. He wanted the truth. He wanted to understand the highest principle of existence. Dongshan's answer, 3 pounds of flax. That's it, no explanation, no context, 3 pounds of flax. The monk could have asked, what does flax have to do with Buddha? What is the symbolic meaning of 3? Is this a reference to the 3 jewels of Buddhism, the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha? But all of those interpretations are the mind doing what the mind does, reaching for meaning, constructing narrative, building bridges, where the master has deliberately placed a gap. Dongshan wasn't being poetic. He wasn't speaking in code. He gave a completely ordinary, mundane, matter-of-fact answer to the most profound question imaginable, and in doing so, he pointed at something extraordinary. The sacred is not separate from the ordinary. Buddha is not some elevated abstraction floating above the world of 3-pound sacks and daily labor. The truth of existence is not found by escaping the ordinary. It is found by being so completely present in the ordinary that the boundary between ordinary and sacred simply dissolves. 3 pounds of flax is the whole universe. If you can feel that, not understand it, not agree with it, but feel it, then you've touched what Dongshin was pointing at. Section 7. Kill the Buddha. This one shocks people every single time. Master Linji Yixuan said, "If you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him." For someone from outside the Buddhist tradition, this sounds like heresy. It sounds violent, even. But inside Zen, it is one of the most liberating statements ever made. Here's what it means. If you are walking the spiritual path and you encounter an idea of the Buddha, a mental image, a concept, a goal, a fixed notion of what enlightenment looks like or what it means to be awakened, and you cling to that image will imprison you. The Buddha you imagine is not the Buddha. It's a thought. And thought, no matter how refined or spiritual, is still thought. It is still the mind playing its games, constructing its models, generating its simulations. Linji is saying, don't worship your ideas about awakening. Don't fall in love with your spiritual progress. Don't build a shrine to your concept of truth. The moment truth becomes a concept, it stops being truth. Kill the Buddha means, let go of every fixed idea, even the holiest ones, especially the holiest ones. Section 8. The Gate with No Gate. The collection called The Gateless Gate, Mumonkan in Japanese, takes its name from a paradox embedded in the very act of Zen practice. There is a gate, you must pass through it to reach liberation, but the gate has no gate. Which means there is no barrier. There never was. The only thing standing between you and complete freedom is your absolute certainty that there is something standing between you and complete freedom. The gate is your belief in the gate. This is the final, devastating logic of koan practice. After all the wrestling, all the sitting, all the burning frustration of a mind that cannot solve what it's been given, the realization arrives not as an answer, but as the collapse of the question. You were never locked outside. You were standing in the doorway the entire time, convinced there was a door, staring at the frame, analyzing the hinges, calculating how to pick a lock that was never there. The laughter that sometimes erupts in Zen monasteries when a student finally passes a koan isn't relief. It isn't triumph. It is the utterly helpless, joyful laughter of someone who has just realized they spent years searching desperately for their glasses while wearing them. Outro closing reflection. So what do we do with this? You don't have to sit in a monastery. You don't have to shave your head or learn Japanese or memorize ancient texts. But you can try something right now, after this video ends, that costs you nothing and might change everything. Carry one question today that you don't try to answer. Not what should I have for lunch? Not a practical question. A real one, something like, who is the one who is aware right now? Or, what is here before I name it? Don't think about it. Don't analyze it. Just let it sit in you the way a stone sits at the bottom of a river, still, heavy, undisturbed by the current rushing over it. The Zen masters weren't trying to make you smarter. They were trying to make you freer. And the strange, beautiful, maddening truth of the koan is that you already are, you just haven't stopped thinking long enough to notice. Your brain can't solve this. But you, whatever you are beneath the brain, already know the answer. If this opens something in you, share it with someone who asks big questions. Subscribe for more journeys into the ideas that matter. And leave me a comment, tell me, which koan hit you the hardest?